Hello there, my name is Josie and you are listening to the Yoga Local podcast. Welcome. I'm recording this from our studio here in Wellingborough, and it's designed to create a platform for us to have bigger conversations than we can have, for an hour during a class. So I wanted to ask you today if you've got any less trust in authority these days. And I will challenge you otherwise, because I think it's prevalent, right? We're trusting less and less in the powers that be, and it's no wonder people are blatantly these days creating content with the sole purpose of getting us to engage with it. Influencers are at it, politicians are at it, and sadly, even in the yoga industry, that's how the game is being played. It's called engagement farming. It might be called marketing, but really it's just become a free-for-all out there. And disappointingly, I think this is because that's how the system is wired, and it has been for a long time, even before the internet back in the day when it was print publishing that kind of held the power, or maybe radio and television. There was an element of rewarding the type of information that's put out there by how much engagement that it gets, not by how good that content is, not by how informative it is, not by how much improves your life and takes you on an evolutionary journey, but just because it gets a rise, right? It triggers us in some way. It gets us talking, even if we're talking a load of rubbish, then there is a reward, and it's just it's just magnified now through the scale of the internet and social media. But basically, anyone who's trying to put a message out there, if they're not getting a reaction, if they're not getting engagement, they're not doing their job. And that is a problem in that it's regardless of the quality of that content, and that there's so much of it out there. So we're having to, as a population, wade through that. And what do we trust? Where do we put our trust? It's becoming way more difficult, and increasingly I feel like we're getting more and more disappointed because we put our trust in things, and then it's all too obvious at some point when we realize that trust has been misplaced in some way, and that has a whole series of consequences for our health and well-being and our feeling of security and our ability to thrive. Our basic needs are to feel secure and safe in our world. And if we can't trust in those things that give us a sense of leadership and integrity and authenticity, then we feel alone. We feel alone and on our own and trying to figure it out, which is where I think we really need to dig deep into our yoga practice and find this power over our own circumstances that is available to us when we understand that although all those things are out there pushing our buttons, we're the one that put the buttons there in the first place, and we can choose to remove those buttons. We can choose to not engage, to not be triggered, and start to trust in something with a little bit more stability, okay? And in yoga terms, that would be our self, true self, that part of us that is unwaveringly unchangeable, unmovable, the part of the self that is soulful. It's not governed by our egos that are probably chasing all those shiny things and looking for the likes and looking for the small wins. But yeah, starting to do that deep work that puts us in connection to a deep truth of who we are, and so that we can put our authority back on ourselves and self-govern and have our own ability to discern what is truth and what is false, and to discern which choices are going to help us move our lives forward and which choices are going to be unhelpful and move us backwards along the path of evolution. So yogis would call this freedom, right? The freedom to choose, the freedom to be yourself, the freedom to trust in something much bigger than your little ego identified sense of self. And no, goat yoga won't get you there, right? I'm just saying, yeah, you might or puppy yoga, right? Oh, like lovely cute goats, lovely cute puppies, all that content gets all the eyeballs, but it's not going to get you to any sense of true promise of yoga, okay? And unfortunately, neither will a lot of what's being served up in the yoga industry as well, because it's all about eyeballs on our content and bums on mats. And it's hard to say, but there's not a lot of meaningful practice going on. There's not a lot of practice that we can put our trust in. And bringing a sense of true meaning to our practice, let's just emphasize, is the only way that we can bring any level of longevity and success to our yoga practice, to moving towards that deeper sense of self and who we are, and having trust and autonomy in our decision making, making choices from a soul's driven sense of self, and feeling less like we've got to reach out and find out where we can lean on that authority externally. So I'm here to invite you to not waste any more time, and let's start to put our trust on something that is time tested and has science behind it, a traditional yoga path. If you've ever been fooled into believing that reaching this goal of higher states of awareness, discovering true self, coming back to who you are, is just too hard. This state of samadhi that it's called in yoga, where we become more in proximity to that part of our most conscious sense of self, our most subtle sense of self, soulful self. A lot of the time, in mainstream Western yoga, I think they have put that in the too hard box. For most of us, that's too hard for us to achieve. That's not for, everyday population. That's for the sages over in the Himalayas in their caves. And that asana posture practice is yoga. And so you just carry on doing that. You're good to go, right? Just crack on with your asana practice. The other stuff, that's for the too hard box. Okay, well, I think a lot of us maybe have or feel like that has some truth to it. It's because yoga as a practice is a discipline. It's something that requires us to show up daily, right? And work through a specific scientific process that will move us from where we are to where we want to be. And a lot of us maybe are not feeling like we have that structure in our lives, that discipline in our lives to follow through on that. And it is hard. It is hard, but it's not impossible. And we are being guided away from the real gems of a yoga practice, and in what one of my teachers said, Deepak Chopra actually writes this in his book. It's like, it's the equivalent of trading a diamond for a lettuce. We're trading the true promise of yoga, which is higher awareness, higher consciousness, connection to self, for a lettuce, which is a physical practice that maybe makes us look good, makes us feel good, but doesn't give us any true power. It doesn't start to help us remember that we are a force of nature. And when we're not so lost in all the noise out there, when we can start to turn our attention to ourself and the power that is within us all, then we can really start to level up. That's when we become really capable. We become more resilient. We start to worry less, because we can rely on ourselves, and we understand what's out there is fleeting. It comes and goes, but who we are and what we value and how we operate from a soul level is something that we can trust in and find meaning from. And all that other stuff is the noise that's getting in the way. So having fumbled my way through this whole process and knowing that there's so much misinformation out there, there's so much bad content, there's so much stuff out there just trying to push your buttons, get you to engage with it. Because I've been through that path, it's been a little bit of a minefield, and I've arrived at this understanding that it's a traditional path where you really find meaning. Now I feel like I want to get everybody to that same space as quickly, as efficiently as possible. If you think about what yoga is offered out there right now, from the extremes, the goat yoga, the puppy yoga, I don't know, there's so many ways, beer yoga, that yoga has been fractured and fragmented into something it's completely not, but will get your attention. There's so many ways that it's happening, so people are starting to see, well, that's what's going to get me rewarded, that's what's going to get me a following, that's what's going to get my class full, so I will do that. And and why even bother learning the traditional teachings, the traditional methods, the traditional technologies, which take a lot of work, right? a lot of work as a teacher to embody, first of all, and then to commit yourself to teaching others. It's not instant win, it's not instant gratification, but it's the path, and it's the path that will deliver you to where you want to be. So why are we wasting our time chasing all the shiny objects? Why are we trading our diamonds for lettuces? Let's see if we can really step back from what's out there, and let's come back to what we can revere in the traditional sense, the stuff that's been passed down through thousands of years, that has been generously shared orally on the in the main to protect it from being destroyed. So this oral tradition is really intrinsic to yoga, because that's what's helped it to survive. As long as we've got our voices, we can share this wisdom. If it's contained within books, it becomes susceptible to being, well, first of all, being burnt or destroyed, hidden, but also manipulated and used for less than great reasons. So I guess the the importance here is to understand just how lucky we are to have some of these practices, these technologies, these methods still alive and well today, and that there are so many generous teachers that are putting so many hours into learning this stuff so that we can all benefit, so that we can all come back to ourselves, our souls, and start to remember that we're powerful, that we can let go of all that noise out there and start to trust in who we are. And then from that powerful place, then we get to change the world around us, however big or however small. We can't do it from an agitated state. We can't do it from a space which is in fear and in worry, in a space where our minds are constantly doubting and spiraling back into negativity. So the tradition is there because so many people over the years have protected it and have passed it on and have done a lot of work for it to end up in our hands. And what is really sad is that it's now being stripped and fragmented into sound bites and into fluff and something to sell to you, to get you to engage in, regardless of whether or not it's fulfilling on its original promise, which is the freedom, which is that sense of self. That is why yoga is here. It was why it's being offered to us. I know it's a lot to digest. So, for me, it's just about having a conversation. Like, if we are not finding meaning in our practice, if we are not working in a way that is actually moving us towards a state of yoga, regardless of how hard it is, then what are we doing it for, right? We're just doing it to fill time. We're just doing it for entertainment. Where are you putting your trust? Can we start to recognize that if we're engaging in that noise, then we're feeding the problem rather than solving the problem. So can we make that big step and choose something else? Choose something else. Choose to disengage. Choose not to let your buttons get pushed. Choose to turn your attention to a practice that can actually deliver you a sense of yourself, a remembrance of the self, of stability in the self, of the power of being yourself, and being connected to an intelligence that is way beyond any influencer or authority that you will find on Instagram. Okay, so I hope you found this conversation interesting. Please do comment. Let me know what you think. It is a little bit of a ramble. Because I think some of these conversations are difficult to have, and I do try and make them relatable. I think we're all in this world together, and we're all trying to figure it out. But it's important that we find the right tools, the things that are going to move us forward, the things that are going to help us spiral upward along the evolutionary ladder and not bring us down. I want to be part of society that's helping to move us on the right path. And I think from what I know about the tradition of yoga and the practice of yoga, that's what it's there to do. It's there to help accelerate our growth. It's there to help us become more powerful, not in an obnoxious or overbearing way, but powerful in terms of being able to make good choices for ourselves and therefore for everyone. So if you're interested in more of that and how we bring that tradition into our practice, how we revere tradition in practice, how we're using the teachings that have been passed down through a lineage and therefore hold themselves an element of Shakti and power. If you want to learn all about how we do that and how you can start to get on that path, then I'm just a message away, and you can get hold of me through the very means of media that we've talked about today. Let's use the media, let's use these technologies that we have as a way to turn things around and in our favor, and pull us out of some of this triggering, stressful space that we're all kind of swimming in right now. And I'm hoping that the more of you that subscribe to this path, the more of us that can then really start to steer the ship around. So yeah, if that sounds good, get in touch, and I will leave you with that and see you on the next podcast. Okay, bye for now.